was the Calvin Ridley situation. Because I mean, I know that we like the Jaguars, all the reasons we were drafting Travis Etienne, and I love the Cowboys. But, when I look at just ADP differentials, situational skill differentials in ADP, I can't get my head around the differential between a Calvin Ridley and someone like Brandon Cooks. These guys are similar ages. They have sort of similar roles, I believe, in ascending offenses. I'm just as excited to see Brandon Cooks with a star on his helmet as I am to see Calvin Ridley with the 0 and the Jaguar. And yet one guy's 3rd round, one guy's 8th, 9th round.
Brandon Cooks ever go for 1,400 yards sharing a field with Julio Jones?
No.
Calvin Ridley did.
I know. He did.
I think Calvin Ridley is just a much better player. So I all offseason, I was fading Calvin Ridley.
Much better player? Brandon Cooks is pretty damn good, dude.
He's pretty damn good.
But he's not an alpha, and neither is Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley had that one year where Julio Jones could barely walk, and Matt Ryan threw the ball 777 times.
All offseason, I was saying, Christian Kirk just isn't going to disappear. Calvin Ridley's 2 years removed from football, often injured, new quarterback, all these things. And there were a lot of red flags. And I just kept asking myself, why is Calvin Ridley getting drafted in round 3? What am I missing? So I went back in the football history, started watching some games from 2020, and I said, oh yeah, Calvin Ridley is really, really good at football. And then what we're seeing now out of camp, we tell ourselves all the time, don't overreact to camp clips. You're going to see these clips littering your Twitter feed, and you don't want to overreact to them, but he looks good. I mean, he looks fast. He's quick. He's still a polished route runner, which is exactly what he was drafted for and what he did well in Atlanta. And it's admittedly impossible to build like a data-based case for Calvin Ridley because his career trajectory of like being buried behind one of the best wide receivers in NFL history for 2 years, seizing the opportunity, and then Julio Jones leaves, and then he gets injured, and then he gets suspended for gambling, and then he goes to a new team. Nobody has ever had that NFL career trajectory. So, I mean, we really have to paint a picture.
We have one player that had a similar trajectory.
Let's hear it.
Josh Gordon.
Come on, man. No.
Hey, that one season that we all remember.
That was his rookie year, right? That was
that one season, that one outlier season. He wasn't that efficient, but he did have all the stats you could ever imagine. 1,600 yards. Double-digit touchdowns on a bad team. I mean, it was amazing. And then what happens? He needs to take time away to take care of himself. Then he's breaking league rules. He gets suspended for a year, comes back, has to change teams, goes to a new team, goes to the Patriots, looks amazing with the Patriots. I mean,
I can't get behind a Calvin Ridley. You can't. Oh, man, get out of here, man. You're crazy. You're crazy. I love you, man.
It's fine. It's the best. Listen, I think deeply about these things because it's my job. Thankfully, we have this as our jobs. And I tried my best. I people were throwing out all kinds, even non-wide receivers, Le'Veon Bell and all these things. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't have a good one, but the best I can do is Josh Gordon.
So, I mean, again, I'm willing to admit that I could be wrong on Calvin Ridley. Much like we talked about with Ramondre Stevenson, the range of outcomes is vast. And when you get to that point in the draft, when you're looking at wide receivers and you get down into the Calvin Ridley range, you're looking at T. Higgins, who is a great wide receiver. And if something happens to Jamar Chase, he's got a huge upside there. And DK
just
Metcalf,
like Calvin Ridley, if something happens to Christian Kirk.
Don't get me wrong, man. I love Christian Kirk. I'm still drafting a ton of Christian Kirk, but I don't know if there's a player with higher upside in that range than Calvin Ridley. If he can be the player that we saw in 2020 and 2021 before the injury, the guy that we saw in Atlanta, if he can be that guy, on what projects to be a high-powered offense that's going to be, top 8, top 7 in plays run. They're going to throw the ball a ton. Trevor Lawrence is probably throwing for 4,000 plus yards this year. Calvin Ridley has that, I don't want to say overall wide receiver one in his range of outcomes, because that would take an incredible amount of touchdown luck, but Calvin Ridley could easily be a top 5 wide receiver this year, and you're drafting him as, potentially your wide receiver 3.
At his ADP, I'd rather have DK Metcalf, and I would actually rather have a guy that goes 10 picks later in Jerry Jeudy.
I think the range of outcomes for Jerry Jeudy is much more narrow. I think it's a safer pick for sure, but I don't know if Jerry Jeudy can hit a top 5 wide receiver outcome, which is what I'm hoping for with Calvin Ridley. So
I got to admit it. In the third round, when I'm drafting I don't like drafting running backs in the third round because they can be Breece Hall and Ramondre Stevenson, and the trap door could be pulled out from under them. That's why it's very dangerous. If I'm going to go wide receiver, I'm going to wear a condom. I do. In round 3, I'm going safety first. I am.
I get it.
I'm slipping it on, and I'm going Jerry Jeudy. It's a safer move. He's the clear number 1. This is an offense that's destined to improve for reasons you even talked about earlier with the investments in the offensive line. It's going to be better. New coach, new offensive line, fresh start, humbled Russell Wilson. I do think he has a higher floor than Calvin Ridley, and that's what I'm drafting in that zone because I'm holding all my upside picks for rounds 5 through 20. Hey, you like that video? Be sure to subscribe and activate those alerts so you get notified as soon as new videos drop. And be sure to check out playerprofiler.com. We have all the tools for you to dominate every type of fantasy league. We have a draft kit, Dynasty Deluxe, data analysis, DFS Dominator, and don't forget the player rankings to rule them all.